Well, I think it's time to begin. I gave you an extra 4 minutes of talk time, so I'll have to have you stay over after. Have to stay over. Before we start our class this morning, Ken Kearns, would you lead us in a prayer? Amen. Well, normally when Bill is out of town, he gives me a week's or so notice. This Wednesday night, he asked me if I would teach on Sunday if I was going to be here. And I knew that was a loaded question. So normally I have over a week to prepare, or even 2 weeks in some cases. But this time it's just 3 days, so we'll see how things go. You know, when different times when I'm studying or you hear things on the radio, and recently I heard somebody talk about the ark and the church and how they compare. So that's what I want to do this morning, is I want us to spend time looking at Noah and the ark, and then the church and the comparisons. So that's what we're going to do this morning. So if that's not what you want to hear, you still get time to go back to John's class in the fellowship room. We'll start with Matthew, the 24th chapter. Matthew 24, 32 through 39. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation certainly will not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass. But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them away. This is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Now, Matthew chapter 24... the apostles, when chapter 24 starts, the apostles are asking Jesus, when will, basically, the end of time, when will he come again? And in chapter 24, he answers those questions. But in our scripture, 32 through 39, he references back to the time of Noah. And I thought it was interesting. You know, I haven't been a Christian a number of years and went to Christian college and had Old Testament lit, New Testament lit, but, you know, maybe I've studied it before, and as I got older, I forget. But what I thought was interesting was when we look at the Bible, we start in Genesis chapter 1, we have God creates the heaven and the earth. He creates man and woman, and then just 6 chapters later, he's destroying it all. And it never really dawned on me and thought about it, but think about how much man messed things up in a short period of time. So I thought, well, how much time passed from Adam to Noah? And if you want to get your calculator out and but if you just Google it, somebody else did it for you. From Adam to Noah is 1,056 years, basically, give or take, but that's what the genealogy, and we can look at chapter 5 and figure that out. And we know that when Noah went into the ark, he was 600 years old, 600. So basically in 1,656 years, from when God created the heavens and the earth, he repented, he regretted that he created man. And I thought, well, how much can you mess it up? And we'll spend a little time looking at chapter 6, because he talks about what was going on. Now, the one thing that I want to say is when you ask a question today, especially if you ask about Genesis chapter 6, remember Deuteronomy 29:29. So somebody will read Deuteronomy 29:29, because that will be the answer for every question you ask that I can't answer. Because if it's not in Scripture, it's just conjecture, and because I'll tell you what they estimate the population of the world was at that time, and it's estimates, because they take a lot of things in consideration. So whoever has Deuteronomy 29:29, please read it now. Sam?
Those things which are revealed belong unto us, and to our children forever, that we may do all the
Okay, so what that basically says is if it doesn't say it in the Bible, if it doesn't say, and when the flood, when the ark shut the doors, there was 9,955,000 people. If it doesn't say that, then we don't know how many people were there. We can speculate, and I can tell you what people speculated, but that's all it is, a speculation. We don't know. But if we look at Genesis chapter 6, we'll look at the condition of man at that time. So let's look at Genesis 6. So Genesis 6 chapter verse 1 basically says, "Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, all whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were old men of renown. Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that every intent of their thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." Now think about that. Let's say the low estimate is 10 million people were on the earth at that time. And how many people did God find? One man. One man, Noah. Think about Noah, and but really think about Noah and his brothers, sisters, just everybody that was connected with Noah was in the other group. But Noah found favor in God. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generation. Noah walked with God, and Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth. Indeed, it was corrupt, for all the flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And then God said to Noah, The end of the flesh will come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark. And we'll talk more about that. But my point here is the man had gone so far off that basically everything in his heart was evil. In the world we live in today, we live in a bad world, but I don't know that everybody's heart is evil. I'm sure there are some people who have evil in their heart all the time, but how does Genesis 6 there compared to Columbus, Ohio, September the 3rd, 2017, and the world that we live in today? We don't have giants any longer. But when we talk about some of the things that were going on there, what's marriage in our society today? What is marriage? It's supposed to be sacred, whatever you want it to be. Yeah, so when you think about if God was sorry he created man then, what do you think he's thinking today? Is his heart sorry of the condition of man? And especially marriage, because the first thing that we had with Adam and Eve, that they were a husband and wife, that was what God kind of created. That was the intent. And then look at where we are today in the marriage, in our society, and marriage no longer means anything. Most people today will live together and there's no thought about any consequences. Some of the things that go on today, some of the social issues, today in our society, we have one of the main issues is single-parent households. And I'm not sure when this was a recent statistic, but it said 14 million single parents are raising 28 million single without a parent, with one parent households. So think about our society when 14 million are having children out of wedlock. It's more of a norm in society. That's more normal than a normal marriage today in society. So when we think about what was happening then and what's happening now, we're not far off. If we were balancing the scale and we said, okay, Genesis 6, they were doing this, what are we doing? And we're probably down here, and they might look like church mice or something good compared to what we do today with how our society is. Drug and alcohol abuse. 21% of high school seniors say that they get high. Not that they got high, but 21% of every high school senior is getting high today. 41% say they drink alcohol regularly. Now these are 17, 18-year-old kids who are developing habits which are contrary. But again, when you go to the single parents, households where they're not being raised, 20% of Americans today say they attend church once a week. So when you take church, when you take God out of the family, we have Genesis chapter 6, where God wasn't present, where men did what they want to do, they rule by their heart. How different are we today? You know, we talked about the fair booth. We did the fair booth and work in the fair booth. For the first time, I actually heard somebody say, I'm a heathen. I don't want it. Well, they just admit publicly, walking. I mean, they don't even make eye contact. Just makes that statement. Wasn't ashamed of it. He just kind of shouted out, I'm a heathen. Don't need it. Admits they're a heathen. Do they really? Does our society really think that they can say they're a heathen and there's no repercussions? Well, when you have a society that doesn't believe that there's a God, doesn't believe that there's a judgment, they can do that, can't they? That's what happens. Man rules, and what it said in Genesis 6, they did what was in their heart, and their heart was evil. In the world we live in today, when people don't know that there's a God, doesn't believe that there's a real God, they think there's somebody up there, but is it the real God of punishment that's going to destroy and destruction? Now, we can look at, we all know the verse, the path that leads to destruction, how many, and then that leads to heaven is few. Let's talk about that few and many. One person that calculated normal lifespan from Adam to Noah and how long men lived and how many. I mean, some people really take a lot of time to calculate and think this stuff through. Their calculation is there could have been 10 trillion people at that time. 10 trillion people. Now, that's the high end. The low end I saw was 10 million. Let's say it's 10 million, the low end. 10 million people on the earth at that time, and how many were saved? I can show you with two hands. So you got low figure 10 million people, and 8 were saved. Now, how long it took Noah to build the ark? I'm not sure. You can calculate. In chapter 6, it says 120 years. Some people think that from that point, he had 120 years before the flood. Some think that's when the man's lifespan will now go to 120 years. But again, this is a Deuteronomy 29:29 answer. We don't know for sure how long. Some say 6, but it was a long period of time. So when God told Noah to build an ark, we don't find Noah questioning God, do we? What happened when God told Moses to do something? What did Moses do? Made excuses. I can't do that. I don't know if Noah knew what a cubit was or if he knew what gopher wood was. I don't know if he knew what 3 stories were. But that's what God told Noah to do. And we don't see anything where Noah says, but God, it's just me and my 3 boys. We never see Noah questioning God. We see Noah did what God told him to do. Now, when we look at that, when we look at Noah's time and what Noah did, the world around him was sin. Basically, that's what we can say. The world around him was all sin. He was faithful. He remained faithful. Even to the point of entering the ark and the ark closed up, he was faithful. Noah was a faithful man. We talk in Bill's class, in Isaiah, and other classes, other books of the Bible, the Old Testament, where we see there was always a remnant of the children of Israel. That remnant was small, but there was always a remnant because that line had to stay clear through the seed of David to Jesus. So there always was a remnant. So here we have Noah, a devout man, a faithful man, and God tells him, in verse 13 he says, God says, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and outside with pitch. This is how you should make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. And you shall make a window for the ark. You shall finish it in a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in the side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. And behold, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, and your wives, and your sons' wives with you. And every living thing of all flesh shall be bring two of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you, that they shall be male and female." So basically, God's telling Noah, he's given him the plan to build an ark of gopher wood, how he wants it, the window. And so God commanded. Noah didn't question, but Noah did what he was supposed to do. Any questions, points to this? Comments?
Well, I think you can relate that to the church today in the sense that those in the church would be saved. We also back up a step and think, that our hope is to perpetuate the gospel through our families and others that we can reach. But the problem in our society is tolerance. I mean, people may believe in God, and may say they believe in His Son, but they look at other people and say, well, hey, whatever you want to do is up to you. Just as long as you don't hurt somebody. The government is letting people change the definition of marriage, which is taking away something that God established back in the beginning. So, I mean, kids go to school. I know Abby is up in Worthington, and there's a gay couple that had children in school with her. Back a few years ago, she came home and asked Amy if she could have a stepmom. She said all these people had stepmoms, so that, I mean, this is kids' grade school. They didn't understand it. But the kids, with other kids, with their social interactions, they want to be accepted. And what kind of trouble are the parents going to get in? Like Amy Jason, they say, well, you can't have this girl in the photographer because our parents are homosexual. I mean, all these things fall on those kids. So, we have to realize it's here. It's all around us. It's not as bad as it was in days ago, because not every place, hard as equal plots to continue. But the only hope we have is to convert as much of the world we can, especially our own families. And, if we don't do that, what else is it?
Yeah.
There is nothing but the gospel that can save the world. And it may just be in the end that happens that way. The church losing its identity. The fact is, Jimmy said when he taught his class, he said you should be, when he came here to church, that you could go anywhere and say church right you want. Now, it doesn't matter what it says, when you get inside, it may not be what's on it. But people, again, they're letting this come in, and the church losing its identity, and we need to do something. I always maintained education was the way to salvation. We can educate ourselves. How do these people come in and cause division or bring false doctrine in the church? Membership does something
Right. Right.
Or doesn't have a backbone, whichever.
Yeah.
And we're letting this happen.
Yeah. It all falls down to every individual, because when we don't understand, when we don't study, when we rush into a marriage or relationships and children are born, but when the norm of your society is anti-God, and that's really what our society, and I try to think about in my lifetime, and I guess I relate things to TV, and we go back to when we had 3 basic channels, and it was, Andy Griffin's show, and it was B. Taylor helping Andy raise his child, and I mean, it's just things then. We had a society that said you can't do these things, and the society monitored what was there because it wasn't allowed. You couldn't do certain things in TV till certain hours. Now, with cable TV and internet, you don't even need TV. You just need a phone that's got internet. You can access anything. So when our society, when we look at Genesis 6, didn't have the internet, they didn't have society, but they had sin. However you name it, it's sin, whether it's homosexuality, whether it's murder, whatever it is, it's sin. And we have that today. We have violence in high schools. When I went to high school, the last thing I thought about, and one of the times I was preparing to teach or preach or something, there was a survey in 1955. In 1955, there was a survey for high school teachers, and it was, what were your problems in high school? 1955. The biggest problem was kids chewing gum, not throwing things in the wastebasket, not staying in line. In 1955, the teacher was worried that kids weren't throwing trash in the trash can, or they were chewing gum. Today, you know what teachers worry about? Getting killed at school, having a student murder them, having no control over what's going on. When we know that 21% of our high school seniors are getting high, 41% drink alcohol regularly, and probably most of those have it in their household. Whether it's 2 parents or 1 parent, they probably have access to all that in their home. And so when you think about our society where the education is supposed to be, and then think about our education system, like in the 70s, started saying, no, there's no God. This all evolved. It's evolution. There's no being of God. So we started taking that out of our schools and teaching kids that it's evolution. And now we just continue on farther and farther and farther to where we are in our society. So as Christians, we are each commanded. I taught a whole series on Wednesday nights about what every one of us who are Christians, we are all individually responsible for our own soul, but we have to study to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. We always have to be able to give an answer. So when we see somebody in need, we can help them, but that we can also share. I'll give you $1, but I'll give you something more important. I'll give you an opportunity for eternal life. What do we look at in our life where we have an opportunity, but how many times we let those opportunities pass? Because we're afraid somebody will make fun of us, or we're afraid someone might laugh at us. Think about how much Noah was laughed at for numbers of years. Let's just say 60 years. That he's building this monstrosity. And what were people saying? But Noah didn't stop. We can see where Noah was a preacher. He continued to say, get right, it's coming. Nobody believed. And whether it was 10 million or trillion, but every one of those people, once those doors shut and the flood water started, what did they want? They wanted in, didn't they? They wanted in then. But what was it? It's too late. Too late. It was over. So when we look at where we are today in our society, we live in a society where people who believe in God don't have the backbone to stand up for God. Is what I think what it comes down to is that I don't have a backbone to say I'm a Christian. I won't go to the bar with co-workers because I'm a Christian. If God would come while I'm in there, I wouldn't want that. I'm a Christian. I don't participate in that. I don't do those things anytime because of what I believe. Or how easy is it to just say, well, I'll go and I'll just have a Sprite or a Coke. Or my influence might influence those people. Does that work? No. How do you think the person who took their first drink? Probably by trying to influence somebody else. And then it was like, well, I'll just take a drink. It won't bother me. And then so on and so forth. So when we look at the problem in our world today is that Christians have allowed the world to pass us by. In the 70s when abortion started, we just said how terrible it was. In the 2000s, when they started saying marriage is a woman and a woman, and we said, oh, that's terrible. But we let it go by. So, as Christians, we have to continue to pray. We have to study. We have to know what's going on, because we don't have Noah building an ark today, but we see here that it can happen anytime, like a thief in the night. So we all have to study and be prepared, because we don't know when it's coming. Don?
At that time he built the ark, had it ever rained after that point?
There's no record of it. There's no record of it.
Back in Genesis 2, verse 6, it said there's a mist from the earth and water the ground. So
I've heard people say, different people talk and say that it probably hadn't rained at that point, definitely hadn't flooded, and to build an ark for a flood that people didn't understand. But the main thing that he preached, I think, was destruction. That it's come, however it came, it's coming. But the people didn't listen. But he continued to preach. He preached it. He did it as he was commanded.
You know, Ned, you also have to be proactive and realize that you can't just hope this all goes away. Last year at the Polishing Pulpit, Matt Vega made several presentations on how to protect ourselves legally from the LGBT people that are going to come in and force you to marry them or to use your building, for whatever. And here about Southern Columbus, that group said they were coming after the group. I mean, they're going to try to force their way in, and so although people don't like to think of it, we could be in a legal battle with this all. I mean, it's real.
It's real. I mean, Satan is real. What doesn't Satan have in the world today? He doesn't have us. He doesn't have the church. So if he could destroy the church from within, number one, because people don't study, and you have somebody who can come in and talk nice, but start leading the other way, and people will follow. I mean, look at the people who follow people who are good Christian preachers who have gone adrift, and the people follow because they like that person. They like what he says. Look at Joel Epstein. I mean, all the riff with the flood, but millions of people follow this man. He doesn't speak the truth. So when we look at the world we live in, the people want something, but they're not finding the truth. In Genesis 6, we don't see that people wanted anything. We don't see that they were trying to help Noah, assist Noah, and save me a room. I'm with you. We don't see any of that. We see that their heart was evil and violent, and it was just a bad society. And I don't think it's far from where we are today. So when he built the ark, he built one ark. God said, "For thee, an ark of gopher wood." God told Noah to build an ark. He didn't tell him to build a whole fleet of arks. He didn't tell him to build a lifeboat for the ark. He told him to build one ark. That's all it was going to be required, was one ark to do what had to be done to handle all the animals and Noah and his family. In the same way, we have one church. Jesus didn't come and build a whole fleet of churches, did he? No, he built a church. We can look at Matthew 16:18 with Peter's confession. In Matthew 16:18 he says, "Thou art Peter, upon this rock I will build my church." In Ephesians 4:4 we have the list of ones, and we have one body, one church. That's all that it is. Colossians 1:18. That one I can't say off memory, so we'll look at Colossians 1:18. "And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, and that in all things he may have the preeminence." So, it's one body. Just as God told Noah to build an ark, he built one ark to the specifications that he gave him. Christ established the church, one church that he's the head of, one church. How will the world be destroyed again? Fire. 2 Peter 3:10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in them will be burned up. So, in Noah, we don't really have that in my notes, but when it's all over, what was the sign of the covenant? The gay rainbow, right? Oh, that's not what it was? But that's what we made it, right? That he gave a rainbow as a sign of a covenant that he'll never destroy the world again by flood. But we've taken that rainbow, which means something to Christians, and we've taken, again, something that meant something, and now it has no meaning. For us, it does for a certain group. So, just as there was one ark, we have one church. What I think is interesting is that obviously the people at that time had no belief. Because if somebody had thought that there really was something, you think that maybe somebody would have figured out how to make a canoe or something, just in case this Noah was right. But they were totally unprepared. In our world today, people have said, well, let's make a church easier. Let's make a church where you don't even have to come to church. Just send in we take credit cards, just watch us on TV, just send us your money. That's all you need to do, and we'll put you on our roll, or touch the TV and we'll pray for you, or we've tried to make it easy, and it's not. There's one church. There was one ark that saved people. Being in the ark is what saved Noah and his family and all the animals. Being in the church is all that will save those who are in the church. There was one door. Not only did God tell Noah to build an ark, he also told him specifications to build that ark with one door. Now you think about, in our society today, what would MSHA or OSHA or somebody else have said about that boat with one door, one window? It's not going to float, is it? It's not going to happen. We would shut it down because you can't have that. So, but here, there was one door, is all that it needed. And we can look in John chapter 9. It tells us that, John chapter 10, verse 9, 7 and 9. But Jesus said unto them, most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who enter came before me as thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and he will go in and out and find pasture. And then in John 14, verse 6, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So, how do we get to heaven? Obey God, but how do we get there? Through what? Through Christ. That's the only way. Not John the Baptist, not Peter, not Paul, not a Roman Pope or anyone else. We get to Jesus, we get to heaven, only one door that leads to heaven, and that's through Christ. He's the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father but through Him. So we have to go by Jesus. Don? Yeah. Yep. And right now it's open to all. The door's open to all. We welcome all. Even those who might come and try to sabotage us, but if we can't convert them, but we'll definitely not just bow down to them. But this door's open to all. Matthew 18, verse 20. Jesus tells us that where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So it's through Christ. We have to be Christ-centered in our lives. And Matthew 18:20 tells us that we don't have to have a church with 3,000 people. As long as we have two or three gathered in His name, that's where He is. That's what He wants. He wants us, in whatever capacity we can be, to follow Him. We have one window. God told Noah to put a window shalt thou make to the ark. What did that window do? What did it provide for them? Light. Air. Ventilation. But light. It provided light. We don't know specifications of the window, but we know there was a window. One window. And that window provided light. Back in John chapter 8, verse 12. Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. And then in 1 John chapter 1, verse 7. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sins. So, as the ark had one light, or one window that provided light, we have one light to heaven, and that's through Jesus Christ. In Psalms 119, verse 105 says, the word is a lamp unto my feet. 2 Peter 1:19, as we have the word of the prophecy made sure, whereunto ye do well that you take heed, as a lamp shining in a dark place. So, if our world is dark, what is the one light in our world today? Christ, the church. The church, that's the light. And all the things we talked about earlier about what's happening in our society, the one thing that should always be a constant is there's always the Church of Christ is there with a light to help any that need it. So as the ark had a door and a window, the church, the world has a church, a body, and a light, which is Christ. Comments? Okay. There was one wood. God told Noah, make thee an ark of gopher wood. That ark was to be of one kind of wood. So he gave him specifics that it was, we're not sure what gopher wood was, but that's what it was to be made of, and that's what he used, gopher wood. In 1 Peter 2, verse 5, First Peter 2, verse 5 says, I need bigger glasses. You also are living stones and are being built up in a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. So us Christians, we're living stones that are used to build up the church. And in 1 Corinthians 12 and 13, if anybody's got that, they can read it. But 1 Corinthians 12 and 13. Yep, go ahead, please.
For as the body is one and hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have all been made to drink into one Spirit.
Okay, so there was one wood used, gopher wood, and basically we are one body made up of a lot of different individuals, but we still have one common, and that's basically to serve God, to follow Christ. In Matthew 5, 13 and 14 tells us that you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out, trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. So when we think about the church and what we are, that's what we are. We're the church. We're the body. The church is made up of us. I mean, the church isn't the structure, is it? What's the church? It's us. Yes, it's people. You know, every one of us, we're the church. It's the body is us. You know, we can meet in a hut, as in Costa Rica they do, in different places. We can meet in a nice cathedral if we had the funds. We can meet in a building with air conditioning, which isn't working right now, or heater or whatever. But we are the church. The church is us. It's the body. It's one family. One family was saved in the ark. No one else. It was Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and his 3 sons' wives. That's all that was saved. Who's going to be saved? What family? Pardon me? Everyone that believeth and doeth the will, the commandments. That's the family that's going to be saved, and you have to be inside. We're not going to have time to go through it all. But basically, we could look at Real quickly then, there's one builder, and that was Noah. And there's one builder of the church, that was Christ. There was one material used, gopher wood. And then the church is living stones, which is us. There was one light, which was the window, and we have the Word. There was one entrance through the door. One entrance for us is through Christ. And I can give you all scriptures if you want those, but we're running out of time. But there was one family, that was Noah's family. And then to be saved is God's family. There was one name, and that was Noah's family is named. And then us, it's Christians. There was one building, it was the ark. There was one building, it was the church. There was one salvation. Millions were lost, destroyed, died. 8 were saved, and there was only those that were in the ark. There'll be millions and billions of people destroyed that finds destruction, and only a few that are in the body, that are in the church, that will have salvation. We have one hope. In Noah's case, it was a new world after the earth was destroyed and the people were killed. Noah had a new hope with he and his family. And so we are all descendants of Noah through that time. And then what we have as a hope is eternal life. So any comments or questions? Sam?